The ledger slammed shut with such force that dust motes exploded into the afternoon sunlight streaming through the window. And Olivia Thompson knew without looking at another number that her father's inn was lost forever. She pressed her palms flat against the scarred wooden desk, feeling the grain beneath her fingertips, trying to ground herself in something solid when everything around her was crumbling. The Red Horse Inn had been standing in Galesburg, Illinois since 1852, built by her grandfather with his own two hands, passed down to her father who had run it with pride, until consumption took him 6 months ago. Now it was 1878, and Olivia, at 23 years old, found herself holding together a business that was hemorrhaging money faster than she could count it. The knock at the door made her jump. She wiped her eyes quickly, though she had not yet allowed herself the luxury of tears. There would be time for that later, alone in her room after she figured out how to tell her mother and younger brother that they would soon be homeless. "Miss Thompson." The voice belonged to Samuel Chester, the banker, and Olivia's stomach twisted into knots. "May I come in?" She did not want to let him in. She wanted to bar the door, to pretend she was not here, to run away to somewhere she could start fresh without the weight of her father's dreams crushing her shoulders. Instead, she stood, smoothed her plain brown skirt, and opened the door with as much dignity as she could muster. Samuel Chester was a thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles and the perpetual expression of someone who had just bitten into a lemon. He held his hat in his hands and would not quite meet her eyes as he stepped into the small office that smelled of pipe tobacco and old leather, remnants of her father that still haunted every corner. "Miss Thompson, I wish I was bringing better news," he began, and Olivia held up her hand. "Please, Mr. Chester, just tell me plainly, how much time do I have?" He shifted his weight from foot to foot. "The bank needs payment within 30 days. The debt your father accumulated, the loans he took out to keep this place running during his illness, they total nearly $3,000. I have been patient, Miss Thompson, but my superiors in Chicago are insisting we collect or foreclose. $3,000. It might as well have been $3 million. The inn barely made $50 on a good month, and they had not had a good month since her father took ill. The railroad had changed its route 2 years back, taking most of their regular travelers to the new hotel by the depot. They survived now on local trade and the occasional drifter, not nearly enough to keep the place afloat. 30 days, she repeated, her voice sounding hollow even to her own ears. "I am truly sorry," Samuel said, and she believed he meant it. He had been friends with her father, had played cards with him every Thursday night for years. "If there were another way, if I had any power to extend the deadline further, I would, but my hands are tied." After he left, Olivia sat back down at the desk and opened the ledger again, as if the numbers might have somehow changed in the last 5 minutes. They had not. The truth stared back at her in stark black ink, a chronicle of decline she had been too afraid to fully acknowledge until now. The afternoon wore on. Downstairs, she could hear her mother in the kitchen, preparing supper for their 3 current guests. Her brother Thomas, just turned 16, would be in the stables tending to the horses. They did not know yet how dire things had become. She had tried to shield them, to carry the burden alone, but she could not hide it any longer. The sound of hoofbeats outside caught her attention. She glanced through the window to see a rider approaching, sitting tall in the saddle on a gorgeous Palomino mare. Even from a distance, there was something commanding about him, the way he moved with the horse as if they were one creature rather than two. He dismounted with fluid grace, hitched the mare to the post, and pulled his saddlebags over his shoulder. Olivia stood, straightened her hair, and went downstairs to greet their new guest. In the hospitality business, even when your world was falling apart, You put on a smile and made people feel welcome. It was what her father had taught her. The man who walked through the door of the Red Horse Inn was not what she expected. Most of their guests these days were rough around the edges, working men passing through or locals seeking a hot meal and a cheap room. This man was different. He was tall, probably in his late 20s, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of whiskey in lamplight. He wore quality clothes, though they showed the dust of hard travel, and there was a confidence in his bearing that suggested he was accustomed to getting what he wanted. "Good afternoon," Olivia said, finding her professional voice. "Welcome to the Red Horse Inn. Are you looking for a room?" "I am," he replied, and his voice was deep and warm with just a hint of something southern in the vowels. "Heard this was the best place to stay in Galesburg." It was a kind lie. Everyone knew the Grand Hotel by the depot was the finest accommodation in town now. "We do our best. How long will you be staying?" "Not sure yet. A few days at least, maybe longer, depending on how my business goes." He set his saddlebags on the floor and extended his hand. "Name is Harrison Owens." She shook his hand, noting the calluses that spoke of hard work, the firm grip that was confident without being aggressive. "Olivia Thompson. My family owns this inn. Pleased to meet you, Miss Thompson." When he smiled, something in her chest did an unexpected flutter, and she immediately chastised herself for it. She had no time for such foolishness, not with disaster breathing down her neck. She showed him to one of their better rooms on the second floor, aware of his presence behind her on the stairs in a way that made her self-conscious. The room was clean if modest, with a bed, a washstand, and a small table by the window. Her mother kept everything spotless, even as the building itself began to show its age in places they could not afford to repair. "Supper is served at 6 in the dining room," Olivia told him. "Is there anything else you need?" Harrison looked around the room, then back at her with those disconcerting amber eyes. "This is just fine. Thank you." She left him to settle in, returning downstairs where her mother was setting the tables for supper. Margaret Thompson had once been a great beauty, and traces of it remained in her fine bone structure and clear blue eyes, but grief had aged her. She moved more slowly now, and there was a fragility to her that worried Olivia constantly. "We have a new guest," Olivia said, picking up plates to help. "Harrison Owens. He seems like he can actually pay, thank goodness," her mother smiled. "That is good news. We could use more guests like that." She paused, studying Olivia's face. "You look troubled, dear, more than usual. What is wrong?" Olivia hesitated. She had planned to wait until after supper, but the words came tumbling out anyway. "Samuel Chester came by today. The bank needs full payment within 30 days or they will foreclose." The color drained from her mother's face. She sat down heavily in one of the dining chairs. 30 days. "But that is impossible. We cannot possibly raise that much money in 30 days. "I know." Olivia sat beside her mother, taking her hand. "I know, Mama, but I will figure something out, I promise." Even as she said it, she had no idea how she would keep that promise. She had already sold everything of value they owned except the inn itself. She had tried to get work on the side, but there were precious few opportunities for women in Galesburg, and the ones that existed paid barely anything. She had even swallowed her pride and approached her father's brother in Springfield, but he had made it clear he had no interest in helping the family his brother had abandoned. When he chose to remain in Galesburg rather than join the family mercantile business, supper was a subdued affair. Besides Harrison, they had 2 other guests, both traveling salesmen who kept to themselves. Olivia served the meal, roasted chicken and potatoes with fresh bread, while trying not to dwell on the fact that every meal served was using up supplies they could barely afford to replace. Harrison ate with obvious appreciation, complimenting her mother on the cooking. "This is excellent, Mrs. Thompson. Best meal I have had in weeks." Margaret brightened at the praise. "Thank you, Mr. Owens. It is nice to have guests who appreciate good food. Are you in Galesburg on business?" "In a manner of speaking. I am looking into some property investments in the area." He cut another piece of chicken. "I have done well in cattle, and now I am looking to diversify." Olivia felt a sudden wild hope flare in her chest. A man with money, looking for property investments. Perhaps he might be interested in the inn. She could sell it to him, use the money to pay off the debts, and then figure out what to do next. It would break her heart to lose her father's legacy, but it was better than having it seized by the bank. She waited until after supper, when the other guests had retired and her mother had gone to help Thomas with his schoolwork, to approach Harrison. He was sitting in the small parlor, reading a newspaper by lamplight. "Mr. Owens, may I speak with you for a moment?" He looked up, folding the newspaper. "Of course. Please sit down." She sat, folding her hands in her lap to stop them from shaking. "I could not help but overhear you mention you are looking for property investments." "I am," he said, watching her with those keen eyes. "Did you have something in mind?" The words stuck in her throat. Saying them out loud would make it real. But what choice did she have? "This inn. The Red Horse. It has been in my family for over 20 years, but I will be honest with you, Mr. Owens. We are in financial difficulty. My father passed away 6 months ago, and he left significant debts. The bank is threatening foreclosure. If you are interested, I would be willing to discuss a sale." She had expected surprise, or perhaps the calculating look of a businessman scenting opportunity. Instead, Harrison's expression was sympathetic. "I am sorry for your loss. Your father must have been a good man to have built something like this." "He was." Her voice caught and she cleared her throat. "The best man I ever knew. That is why I am trying to save what he built, even if I cannot keep it for myself." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. "How much do you owe?" $3,000. Due in 30 days. He did not flinch at the number, which told her he had that kind of money. She held her breath, hoping, praying. "Miss Thompson, may I be frank with you, please? This inn, in its current state and location, is not worth $3,000. The railroad changed its route, which cut into your business. The building needs repairs. You have competition from the Grand Hotel. If I were to buy it as an investment, I would be lucky to break even in 5 years. Her hope crumbled into despair. She had known it was a long shot, but hearing it said so plainly made it real. "I see. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Owens." She started to stand, but he held up his hand. "I was not finished. I said it is not worth $3,000 as an investment, but that does not mean I would not be willing to help." She sat back down slowly, afraid to hope again. "I do not understand." Harrison leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his expression serious. "I came into some money a few years back. A lot of money through a combination of hard work and pure luck. More than I could spend in a lifetime if I lived extravagantly, which I do not. I have been looking for ways to use that money that feel meaningful, rather than just accumulating more for its own sake." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "What would you say if I offered to pay off your debts, all of them, with no expectation of repayment?" Olivia stared at him. "That is absurd. Why would you do such a thing for strangers?" "Because I can. Because I know what it is like to lose everything and to feel helpless. Because your father built something worth preserving, and it deserves better than to be seized by a bank and sold off to the highest bidder." He smiled slightly. "And because I am an excellent judge of character, Miss Thompson, and I can see that you are trying to carry a burden that would break most people. I admire that. It was too much. Too generous, too strange, too good to be true." Mr. Owens, I cannot possibly accept such charity. It is not charity. Think of it as a loan if that makes you feel better. A loan I could never repay. Then you will owe me. He said it simply, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. You will owe me and only me. Not the bank, not anyone else. Just me. And I am a much more patient creditor than any bank would be. Her mind was reeling. This man, this stranger who had walked in off the street mere hours ago, was offering to save everything. But nothing came without a price, not in her experience. What would you want in return? Nothing untoward, if that is what you are worried about. I am not that kind of man. His voice was firm, almost offended at the implication. But I will be honest, since you have been honest with me. I like this town, I like this inn, and I like you and your family. I have been drifting for a long time, Miss Thompson, looking for a place that feels like it could be home. Maybe Galesburg is that place. Maybe I pay off your debts, stay here at the inn for a while as a guest, see how things develop. If I decide to put down roots here, having friends would be valuable. And if you feel indebted to me for helping you out of a tight spot, well, maybe you will be willing to be one of those friends. It still seemed too good to be true, but there was something in his eyes that made her want to believe him. A sincerity that was hard to fake, and God help her, she was desperate. I need to think about this, she said, and discuss it with my mother. This would affect the whole family. Of course, take your time. Well, you have 30 days, I suppose, but no need to decide this instant. He stood, and she did as well. Sleep on it. We can talk more in the morning. That night, Olivia lay awake in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of everything. Her practical mind kept insisting there had to be a catch. That men like Harrison Owens did not just appear out of nowhere offering to solve all your problems without wanting something in return. But another part of her, the part that was exhausted from carrying so much weight for so long, wanted desperately to believe in something good. She thought about her father, about the pride he had taken in the Red Horse Inn. He had built it to be a place where travelers felt welcome, where the weary could find rest and the hungry could find a good meal. It had been his life's work, and letting it die felt like letting him die all over again. But accepting help from a stranger felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging she was not strong enough to save it herself. The next morning, she rose early as always, helping her mother prepare breakfast for the guests. When Harrison came down, looking fresh and well-rested despite the long ride that must have brought him to Galesburg, she felt her resolve waver. There was something about him that inspired trust, even though every ounce of common sense told her to be cautious. After breakfast, her mother pulled her aside in the kitchen. That Mr. Owens seems like a pleasant man, very polite. Mama, I need to talk to you about something. Olivia glanced around to make sure they were alone, then told her mother about Harrison's offer. She watched Margaret's face cycle through disbelief, hope, confusion, and finally cautious optimism. $3,000, just like that, he said, to think of it as a loan that I would owe him instead of the bank. Her mother was quiet for a long moment, her hand still in the dishwater. Your father always said there were still good people in the world, people who helped because it was the right thing to do. I thought he was being naive, especially after his brother refused to help us. But maybe he was right. Or maybe Mr. Owens wants something he is not telling us about. Maybe. But what choice do we have, Olivia? In 30 days we will lose everything anyway. At least this way we have a chance. Margaret dried her hands on her apron and turned to face her daughter. And if he does want something more, if he tries to take advantage, well, we will deal with that when and if it happens. But I do not think he will. I have a good feeling about him. Olivia wanted to trust her mother's instincts, but she had learned the hard way that good feelings did not pay debts. Still, Her mother was right about one thing. What choice did they have? She found Harrison outside, checking on his horse. The Palomino mare was a beautiful animal, well cared for and clearly valuable. It occurred to her that a man who treated his horse so well was probably a man who kept his word. "Mr. Owens, I have spoken with my mother. If your offer still stands, we would like to accept it." He turned from the horse, his expression pleased but not triumphant. "It stands. I will ride into town this morning and speak with Samuel Chester at the bank. You will want to come with me, I assume, to sign whatever paperwork is necessary." "Yes, thank you. I do not know how to express my gratitude." "No need for gratitude yet. Let us make it official first." He paused, then added, "And Miss Thompson, I meant what I said. You owe me and only me now. But I am not going to come collecting. Consider it a debt of honor rather than money. If someday you can help me the way I am helping you, we will call it even." They rode into town together, Olivia on one of the inn's older horses, Harrison on his Palomino. It was a beautiful September morning, the air crisp with the promise of autumn. And despite everything, Olivia felt something almost like hope stirring in her chest. Samuel Chester's face when they walked into the bank together was a picture of confusion. It deepened into shock when Harrison calmly explained that he would be paying off the Thompson family's debts in full immediately. "Mr. Owens, I do not mean to question your generosity, but this is highly irregular. Are you certain you understand the amount involved?" $3,000, plus accumulated interest. I believe the total comes to $3,247. Harrison pulled out a bank draft from his coat. "This is drawn on the First National Bank of Denver. You will find the funds more than sufficient." Samuel took the draft with shaking hands, examined it, then looked up at Harrison with new respect. "This is legitimate. I will need to send a telegram to verify, of course, but assuming everything is in order, the Thompson debt will be cleared by end of business today." Olivia felt lightheaded. It was really happening. Just like that, the weight she had been carrying for 6 months was lifted. She wanted to cry, to laugh, to do something to release the tangle of emotions inside her, but she held herself together through sheer force of will. The paperwork took hours. Forms had to be filled out, documents signed, the transfer of funds verified by telegram. Harrison handled it all with calm efficiency, as if he paid off $3,000 debts every day. Perhaps he did. She realized she knew almost nothing about this man who had just saved her family. When it was done, when Samuel handed her the paid-in-full documentation, she held the papers like they were made of gold. Her father's inn was safe. Her family would not be homeless. They had a future again. Outside the bank, she finally let herself feel the full force of it. Tears came, and she did not try to stop them. Harrison stood nearby, giving her space but not leaving, and she was grateful for both the privacy and the presence. "Thank you," she said when she could speak again. "Thank you does not seem adequate, but I do not know what else to say." "You do not have to say anything. Come on, let us go tell your mother the good news." They rode back to the inn, and the joy on Margaret's face when Olivia showed her the paperwork was worth more than any amount of money. Thomas whooped and picked his mother up in a hug that made her laugh and scold him at the same time. It was the first time the house had felt truly happy since before her father's illness, and Olivia found herself smiling until her cheeks hurt. That evening, she cooked a celebratory meal, the best she could manage with what they had on hand. Harrison ate with them in the family's private dining area, and it felt natural having him there, as if he already belonged. He told stories about his travels, about places he had been and things he had seen, and Olivia found herself captivated by the life he described, a life of freedom and adventure so different from her own. "Where are you from originally, Mr. Owens?" Margaret asked. "Virginia, originally." My family had a farm there, but it was destroyed during the war. I was just a boy then, too young to fight, but old enough to help try to rebuild after. When my parents passed, I sold what was left and headed west. That was 7 years ago. You have been wandering for 7 years? Olivia asked. More or less. I worked as a ranch hand, a cowboy, drove cattle from Texas to Kansas. Got lucky with a few investments, bought into a cattle operation that did very well. Sold my share last year and have been trying to figure out what to do next. He smiled. Turns out having money is easier than knowing what to do with it. Most people would not consider that a problem, Thomas said, and Harrison laughed. You are not wrong, but money without purpose feels empty. I have been looking for something that matters. His eyes met Olivia's across the table, and she felt that flutter again, stronger this time. She looked away, unsettled by her own reaction. This man had just paid off their debts, had saved them from ruin. The last thing she needed was to complicate that by developing feelings for him. After supper, she walked outside to clear her head. The evening was cool, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. She heard footsteps behind her and knew without looking that it was Harrison. You all right? He asked, coming to stand beside her. I am. Just overwhelmed, I think. This morning I woke up knowing we were going to lose everything. Now we are safe. It does not feel real yet. It is real. You can breathe now, Miss Thompson. Olivia, she said. If I owe you a debt of honor, we should probably use first names. Olivia, he repeated, and she liked the way it sounded in his deep voice. Then you should call me Harrison. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge. Finally, Olivia worked up the courage to ask what had been bothering her all day. Why did you really do it? The truth, not the polite answer you gave before. Harrison was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was thoughtful. I told you I worked as a cowboy for years. What I did not mention was that for a while I was in a bad way. Drinking too much, drifting, not caring about much of anything. I was about 22, angry at the world and angry at myself. I ended up in a small town in Texas, dead broke and half-starved, and I tried to steal food from a general store. He paused, and Olivia waited, not interrupting. The owner caught me red-handed. Should have turned me over to the sheriff, maybe even shot me. Instead, he gave me the food, gave me a place to sleep, and offered me a job in his store. Said everyone deserves a second chance. I worked for him for 6 months, and he taught me about being a decent man, about doing right by people even when it costs you something. When I finally left, he gave me a horse and enough money to make a fresh start. Harrison turned to look at her. That man saved my life, Olivia. Not just literally, though I probably would have died if he had not helped me. But he saved me from the dark place I was in. He showed me kindness when I did not deserve it, and that changed everything. I swore if I ever had the chance to do the same for someone else, I would. Today I kept that promise. Olivia felt her throat tighten. He sounds like a good man. The best. He died 3 years ago. Heart gave out. I went to his funeral, tried to pay back what he had given me, but his widow refused. Said the only repayment he would want was for me to pass the kindness forward, so that is what I am doing. Then I owe him too, Olivia said softly. I wish I could have met him. I think he would have liked you. You remind me of him, actually. That stubborn determination to do the right thing, even when it is hard. They talked for a long time that night, standing under the stars. Harrison told her more about his travels, and she told him about growing up at the inn, about her father's dreams for the place. By the time they went inside, Olivia felt like she had known him for years rather than a single day. Over the next week, Harrison settled into life at the Red Horse Inn like he had always been there. He paid for his room and board despite Olivia's protests that it was not necessary given what he had done for them. He helped Thomas with the horses, fixed things around the inn that had been broken for months, and charmed her mother with his stories and his appetite for her cooking. And despite Olivia's best efforts not to, she found herself falling for him. It was the little things that got to her. The way he smiled when he saw her in the mornings. The way he listened when she talked, really listened, like her words mattered. The way he pitched in without being asked, treating the inn like it was his home too. The way he looked at her sometimes, with a warmth in his eyes that made her feel seen in a way she had not felt in a long time. She tried to remind herself that this was probably temporary, that a man like Harrison Owens would eventually get restless and move on. He had been drifting for 7 years, he had said. Why would he stop now? But then he started looking at property in town. Not to buy the inn, as she had initially suggested, but a piece of land on the edge of Galesburg where he talked about maybe building something, though he was vague about what. He spent time with the local businessmen, making connections, becoming part of the community. He showed no signs of leaving. One evening, about 2 weeks after he had paid off their debts, Olivia found him in the stable brushing down his mare. She had been working up the courage for days to ask him what she needed to ask. "Harrison, can I talk to you?" He looked up, smiling. "Always. What is on your mind?" "How long are you planning to stay in Galesburg?" His hand stilled on the brush. "Is that your way of asking when I am going to leave?" "I suppose it is. I just do not want to assume anything, and I need to know what to expect." Harrison set down the brush and came over to where she stood. "The honest answer is I do not know. I came here thinking I would stay a few days, maybe a week, but I like it here. I like your family, I like this town. And I like you, Olivia, more than I probably should admit." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "What does that mean?" "It means I am not planning on leaving unless you want me to. It means that debt I said you owe me. I am starting to think I am the one in debt to you, for giving me a reason to stop drifting." He took a breath. "I know it has only been 2 weeks, and you probably think I am crazy, but I have not felt this way about someone in a long time. Maybe ever." Olivia knew she should be cautious, should protect her heart, should not rush into anything. But she was tired of being careful, tired of carrying everything alone. And when she looked at Harrison, she saw someone who could be a partner, not just someone passing through. "I like you too," she said quietly. "I have been trying not to, because it seems foolish to care about someone who might disappear at any moment. But I do." Harrison's smile was like sunrise. "Then I guess I should make it clear that I am not disappearing. I am here, Olivia, for as long as you will have me." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Olivia felt something inside her that had been tightly wound for months finally relax. She kissed him back, letting herself feel hope and happiness and the terrifying vulnerability of caring about someone. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Harrison laughed. "I did not come to Galesburg planning to fall in love with the innkeeper's daughter, and I did not wake up that morning expecting a cowboy to walk in and change everything." She smiled. "But I am glad you did." They took things slowly after that, courting properly despite the fact that Harrison lived under her roof. He took her on walks through town, bought her flowers from the market, sat with her in the parlor in the evenings talking about everything and nothing. Her mother approved wholeheartedly, and even Thomas liked him, which was significant since her brother was suspicious of most people. Harrison also made good on his vague plans for property. He bought a piece of land and announced he was going to build a house there, a real home, not just a place to stay. He hired local workers, supporting the community, and threw himself into the project with enthusiasm. "I want you to help me design it," he told Olivia one afternoon as they stood on the empty land, nothing but grass and possibility stretching before them. I am building this for us, if you will have me. Harrison Owens, are you asking what I think you are asking? Not yet. I am old-fashioned enough to think I should court you properly first, get your mother's blessing, do things right. But I am letting you know my intentions. I am building a future here, Olivia, and I want you to be part of it. She looked at him, this man who had ridden into her life when she needed saving and had stayed because he wanted to. I want that too. The house took shape over the following months. It was not a grand mansion, but it was solid and well built, with big windows and a wide porch. Harrison consulted Olivia on everything, from the layout of the rooms to the color of the paint. It became their project, their future taking physical form. In the meantime, the inn thrived. With the debt cleared and some capital to work with, they were able to make repairs, improve the menu and advertise. Business picked up. Word spread that the Red Horse Inn was under new management of sorts, and people started choosing it over the Grand Hotel because of the personal touch and the quality of the service. Harrison helped with that too. He was a natural host, charming guests and making everyone feel welcome. He and Olivia worked together seamlessly, anticipating each other's needs, backing each other up. People started assuming they were married, and neither of them rushed to correct the assumption. By Christmas, the house was nearly finished, and Harrison had become an integral part of Galesburg society. He invested in local businesses, joined the town council, and was generally regarded as a solid citizen and a good man. He had stopped drifting not because he had run out of places to go, but because he had found where he belonged. On Christmas Eve, after a festive dinner at the inn with family and friends, Harrison asked Olivia to take a walk with him. They bundled up against the cold and walked to his new house, which was lit up with lanterns for the occasion. "It is finished," he said as they stood on the porch. "I wanted you to see it complete before I ask you what I have been waiting to ask." He led her inside, and Olivia gasped. It was beautiful, simple but elegant, with warm wood and comfortable furniture. There was a big kitchen because Harrison knew she loved to cook, a study with bookshelves because they both loved to read, and upstairs, bedrooms for a family. "Harrison, it is perfect. It is empty without you." He took her hands, and she saw he was nervous, which was endearing. "Olivia Thompson, I came to Galesburg 7 months ago with no plan beyond finding a place to stay for a few nights. Instead, I found you. I found home. You were drowning in debt, and I cleared it because I could, because it was the right thing to do. I told you that meant you owed only me, but the truth is, I am the one who owes you. You gave me a reason to stop running, a reason to build something that matters. You gave me love when I did not even know I was looking for it." He knelt down, pulling out a ring that caught the lamplight. "I know we have not been courting for very long by conventional standards, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Will you marry me? Will you make this house a home, build a life with me, let me spend the rest of my days trying to deserve you?" Tears were streaming down Olivia's face, but she was smiling. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." He stood and kissed her, and it felt like every good thing she had ever hoped for was suddenly real. When they broke apart, he slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band with a small diamond that suited her perfectly. "I talked to your mother last week," Harrison said. "Got her blessing. She cried and hugged me and said your father would have liked me. I wish I could have met him. He would have loved you. He always said the measure of a man was not how much he had, but what he did with it. You would have impressed him." They stayed in the house for a while, making plans, dreaming about their future. When they finally returned to the inn, Margaret was waiting up for them, and the ring on Olivia's finger told her everything she needed to know. She hugged them both, crying happy tears, and woke up Thomas to share the news. They were married in early spring, in a ceremony at the small church in Galesburg with the whole town attending. Olivia wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit, and Harrison wore a new suit that made him look even more handsome than usual. They exchanged vows in front of friends and family, promising to love and honor each other all their days. The reception was held at the Red Horse Inn, which they had decorated with flowers and ribbons. There was music and dancing and enough food to feed half of Knox County. It was a celebration not just of their marriage, but of community, of second chances, of hope. When it was finally over and they went to their new home as husband and wife, Olivia felt overwhelmed with happiness. Harrison carried her over the threshold, making her laugh, and set her down gently in their front hall. "Welcome home, Mrs. Owens." "Mrs. Owens," she repeated, testing out how it sounded. "I think I like that." Their first night in the house was everything she had hoped for, tender and passionate and perfect. Lying in Harrison's arms afterward, Olivia thought about how different her life was now compared to a year ago. Then she had been drowning, sinking under the weight of debts and responsibilities she could not manage alone. Now she had a partner, someone to share the burdens and the joys. "What are you thinking about?" Harrison asked, his voice drowsy. "How grateful I am, how different everything is." "No regrets, not a single one." She propped herself up to look at him. "You said I owe you. I think you were right. I owe you everything." "You owe me nothing, Olivia. Everything I did because I wanted to, because helping you was helping myself. We saved each other." She kissed him softly. "Then we are even." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Olivia split her time between the inn, which her mother and Thomas continued to run with her help, and her new home, where she was building a life with Harrison. He continued his investments and business ventures, becoming increasingly successful. But he always made time for family and never forgot where he came from. A year after their wedding, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The joy on Harrison's face when she told him made her fall in love with him all over again. He was attentive to the point of being overprotective during her pregnancy, worrying about her constantly, making sure she did not work too hard. Their first child was born in the spring of 1880, a healthy baby boy they named Henry after Harrison's father. Watching Harrison hold their son for the first time, tears running down his face as he stared at the tiny life they had created, Olivia felt like her heart might burst with happiness. "He is perfect," Harrison whispered. "Thank you. Thank you for this, for everything." Being parents changed them, but in the best ways. Harrison was a devoted father, spending every possible moment with Henry, singing to him, playing with him, teaching him. Olivia discovered reserves of love she did not know she possessed, fierce and protective and all-consuming. The inn continued to prosper. Thomas, now 20 and grown into a capable young man, took over more of the daily operations, showing the same dedication their father had. Harrison helped him secure a loan at favorable terms to make improvements, continuing his practice of lifting up those around him. When Henry was 2, Olivia found herself pregnant again. This time it was a girl, whom they named Hope, because that was what Harrison had given Olivia that day. He walked into the Red Horse Inn and changed her life forever. As their family grew, so did their roots in Galesburg. Harrison built an addition onto the house to accommodate their expanding family. They became pillars of the community, known for their generosity and their willingness to help others. Harrison never forgot the lesson he had learned from that store owner in Texas, and he looked for opportunities to pass kindness forward. One day, a young woman came to the inn, clearly desperate, asking about work. Her story was heartbreakingly similar to Olivia's had been: a family business lost, debts piling up, nowhere else to turn. Without hesitation, Olivia and Harrison helped her, giving her a job, a place to stay, and eventually helping her get back on her feet. "You remember what you told me that first night?" Olivia asked Harrison after the young woman had gone upstairs to rest. "About the debt I owed you, I remember. I think I understand now what you really meant. The debt was never about money. It was about paying forward the kindness, helping the next person who needs it. That is how we balance the scales." Harrison smiled. "You always did understand me better than anyone else." Years passed, happy and full. They had 2 more children, another boy and another girl, filling their home with noise and laughter. The inn remained successful, eventually passing to Thomas when Margaret decided to retire. Harrison's business ventures continued to thrive, making them wealthy, though they lived modestly and gave generously to the community. On their 10th anniversary, Harrison took Olivia back to the Red Horse Inn, to the same room where he had stayed that first night. They had arranged for the children to stay with Margaret, wanting a night alone to celebrate. "You remember when I first walked in here?" Harrison asked as they sat together in the small parlor, the same spot where he had first offered to pay her debts. "How could I forget?" "I thought you were either crazy or a con man," he laughed. "Fair assessment. I probably would have thought the same in your position. You changed my life that day. You changed everything. We changed each other's lives." "I was drifting, Olivia, looking for something without even knowing what it was. You gave me purpose, gave me a home, gave me a family. You saved me just as much as I saved you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever miss it? The wandering, the freedom of not being tied down?" "Never. Not once. Every morning I wake up next to you, see our children, live in the home we built together. I am grateful I ended up in Galesburg. I am grateful for every choice that led me to you. I love you, Harrison Owens, more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. I love you too. And you know what? You still owe me." She pulled back to look at him, confused. "What?" He was grinning. "You owe me another 40 or 50 years of this, of waking up together, raising our children, growing old side by side. Think you can manage that?" Olivia laughed and kissed him. "I think I can handle that debt." They stayed at the inn that night, making love like newlyweds, talking until dawn about their life together and the future still ahead of them. It was a perfect anniversary, simple and profound, a celebration of everything they had built together. More years passed. Their children grew, each one developing their own personality, their own dreams. Henry wanted to be a rancher like his father had been. Hope wanted to be a teacher. The younger two were still figuring themselves out, but Harrison and Olivia supported them all, encouraging them to find their own paths. The town of Galesburg grew and changed around them. The railroad continued to shape its development, bringing in new people and new businesses. But through it all, the Red Horse Inn remained a constant, a landmark of hospitality and quality that had survived threats of foreclosure and hard times to become an institution. Thomas eventually married, bringing his bride to work at the inn alongside him. They had children of their own, nieces and nephews for Henry, Hope, and their siblings to play with. The families remained close, woven together by bonds of love and shared history. When Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 73, it was sad but not tragic. She had lived to see her children and grandchildren thrive, had been loved and honored, had known happiness after grief. At her funeral, Olivia spoke about her mother's strength, her grace, her determination to keep going even when things seemed impossible. "She taught me that we are stronger than we think," Olivia said to the gathered mourners. "That with love and determination, we can survive anything. I am who I am because of her, and I will miss her every day for the rest of my life." Harrison stood beside her, a solid presence, holding her hand as she grieved. He had loved Margaret like his own mother, and he mourned her too, but his greatest concern was for Olivia. He made sure she took time to grieve properly, held her when she cried, listened when she needed to talk, gave her space when she needed to be alone. Life continued as it always does. The children grew into adults, started lives of their own. Henry did become a rancher, working alongside his father on land Harrison helped him purchase. Hope became a teacher, beloved by her students for her patience and creativity. The younger two found their own paths, each one making their parents proud. As Olivia and Harrison grew older, they spent more time together, less caught up in the daily business of life and more focused on enjoying each moment. They took walks together every evening, hand in hand, talking about their day, their children, their memories. They traveled a bit, seeing parts of the country neither had visited before, but they always came back to Galesburg, to their home, to the life they had built. On their 30th anniversary, their children threw them a grand party. Friends and family came from all over, filling the house and spilling out into the yard. There was music and dancing and speeches that made them both laugh and cry. When it was Harrison's turn to speak, he stood with Olivia beside him, looking out at all the people whose lives they had touched. 30 years ago, I walked into the Red Horse Inn looking for a place to stay for a few nights. I had no idea I was walking into the rest of my life. Olivia was drowning in debt, and I had the means to help, so I did. I told her that clearing that debt meant she owed only me now. What I did not tell her, because I did not know it yet myself, was that I was drowning too. Not in debt, but in loneliness, in purposelessness, in the emptiness of a life without meaning. She saved me from that. She gave me a home, a family, a reason to wake up every morning grateful to be alive. So if we are keeping score, I think she has more than paid off any debt she owed me. In fact, I am pretty sure I am the one in debt now, and I will spend whatever time I have left trying to pay it forward. The applause was thunderous, but all Olivia could see was Harrison, the man who had kept every promise he had ever made to her, who had loved her faithfully and well for 30 years, who had been her partner in every sense of the word. "You do not owe me anything," she said softly, so only he could hear. "We are even, remember. Then let us stay even for the rest of our lives." They danced that night, moving slowly to music played by a local band, surrounded by everyone they loved. It was not fancy or elaborate, but it was perfect. A celebration of a life well lived, of love that had endured and deepened over decades. As they grew even older, into their 60s and beyond, they slowed down but never stopped. They became the beloved elder statesmen of Galesburg, the couple everyone pointed to as an example of what marriage should be. People told their story about the cowboy who walked in and saved the innkeeper's daughter, and it took on an almost mythical quality in the retelling. But to Olivia and Harrison, it was not a myth. It was just their life, ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. It was the choice he had made to help a stranger, and the choice she had made to trust him. It was years of waking up together, raising children, weathering storms, celebrating joys. It was the quiet moments and the grand gestures and everything in between. The Red Horse Inn, under Thomas's management and eventually his children's, continued to thrive. It became a historical landmark, one of the oldest continuously operating businesses in Knox County, a testament to what the Thompson family had built and preserved against the odds. Harrison's businesses were passed down to their children, who managed them with the same integrity their father had shown. The family became known not just for their success, but for their generosity, their commitment to the community, their willingness to help others the way Harrison and Olivia had been helped. On a warm summer evening, when Olivia was 71 and Harrison was 75, they sat together on the porch of their home, watching the sunset. They were grandparents many times over now, and great-grandparents too. Their legacy was not just in their children and grandchildren, but in the countless lives they had touched, the people they had helped, the community they had strengthened. "You remember that first night?" Olivia asked, as she had asked countless times over the years. It was their story, the one they never tired of telling. "Every detail," Harrison replied, as he always did. "You stood there in that doorway, trying so hard to be professional when I could see the weight you were carrying. I knew right then I was going to help you. I just did not know I was going to fall in love with you too. Best decision you ever made. Second best. The best decision was staying, building a life here. That was when I really chose you, chose us." She squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar calluses, the wedding ring that had not left his finger in nearly 50 years. "I am so grateful you walked through that door. So grateful you saw someone worth saving. You saved yourself, Olivia. You were fighting so hard, refusing to give up even when things seemed impossible. All I did was give you the tools you needed. You did the rest. We did it together. That is what matters." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The evening air was soft and warm, carrying the scent of the roses Olivia had planted years ago. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear their grandchildren playing, laughter carrying on the breeze. "You know what?" Harrison said suddenly. "After all these years, I think you still owe me." Olivia laughed. "Is that so? What do I owe you? Just your smile every morning, your hand in mine. Your voice saying my name. That is all I have ever wanted, and it is more than I could ever repay." She leaned her head on his shoulder, the way she had done thousands of times before. "Then you will have it for as long as I live, Harrison Owens. You will have all of me always. And you have all of me. Until the day I die and beyond." As darkness fell and the stars began to appear, they remained on the porch, two people who had found each other against the odds and built something beautiful together. The debt that had brought them together had long since been paid, transformed into something far more valuable than money. It had become love, partnership, family, legacy. The Red Horse Inn still stood in Galesburg, Illinois, a testament to survival and transformation. The house Harrison had built still sheltered their family, filled with memories and laughter and love. And the two people who had started it all, the cowboy and the innkeeper's daughter, remained side by side, their story complete and yet still being written with every moment they shared. Years later, when Harrison passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, Olivia held his hand and whispered that the debt was finally paid, that they were even now, that she would see him again someday. But even in her grief, she knew that was not quite true. The debt between them had never really been about keeping score. It had always been about love, about choosing each other every day, about building something that would outlast them both. She lived 3 more years without him, surrounded by children and grandchildren who loved her fiercely. She remained sharp and engaged until the end, still telling their story to anyone who would listen, still marveling at how a chance encounter had changed everything. On the day she died, quietly and without pain, her last words were about Harrison, about how she would finally get to tell him in person that he had been right all along. She owed him everything and nothing at all. They had saved each other, loved each other, built a life that mattered. And that was the only debt that ever really counted, the debt of 2 hearts that chose to beat as one. The family buried her next to Harrison in the Galesburg cemetery, under a tree they had planted together years before. The headstone was simple, bearing both their names and a single inscription that said everything that needed to be said. Together always. Their children and grandchildren continued the legacy they had built. The red horse inn remained in the family, passed down through generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story. The house Harrison built was preserved and cherished, becoming a gathering place for family celebrations, a physical reminder of the love that had started it all. And in Galesburg, Illinois, people still told the story of the cowboy who walked into town with enough money to save the innkeeper's daughter from drowning in debt. How he paid it all off and told her she owed only him. How that debt became a love story that spanned decades, transformed lives, and created a legacy that endured long after both of them were gone. It was a story about second chances and choosing to help when you could. About finding home in an unexpected place and building something that mattered. About two people who met at exactly the right moment, when they each needed what the other could offer, and turned that meeting into a lifetime of love. The debt was paid, not in money but in years of devotion. In children raised and grandchildren loved. In a community strengthened and lives touched. In morning smiles and evening conversations. In hands held through good times and bad. In the simple, profound act of choosing each other every single day until death parted them and then reunited them again in whatever lay beyond. And if debts could be measured in happiness, in love given and received, in legacy left behind, then both Olivia and Harrison had been paid back 1,000-fold for that initial act of generosity that started it all. The cowboy had saved the innkeeper's daughter, and she had saved him right back, and together they had saved each other from loneliness, from purposelessness, from lives half-lived. Their story became legend in Galesburg, told and retold, embellished and remembered. But at its heart it remained simple and true. A man helped a woman in need. She trusted him despite her fears. They fell in love. They built a life together. And they lived happily ever after, not because their lives were perfect, but because they faced whatever came together, as partners, as equals, as two halves of a whole that was greater than either of them alone. The end of their story was not sad, because what they had created lived on. In their descendants who carried their values forward, in the inn that still welcomed travelers with warmth and hospitality, in the town that remembered them fondly, in the countless lives they had touched with their generosity and kindness. And somewhere, if such places exist, in whatever realm souls go after leaving this earth, Olivia and Harrison were together again, walking hand in hand under stars that never set, talking and laughing, loving each other without the constraints of time or mortality. The debt between them finally, truly balanced, transformed into something eternal. Back in Galesburg, their great-grandchildren played in the yard of the house Harrison built, unaware of the full story of how their family came to be. But they would learn it eventually, as each generation learned it before them. They would hear about the day the cowboy walked into the Red Horse Inn, about how he saw someone drowning and threw them a lifeline, about how that moment of kindness rippled outward, changing not just two lives but countless others. And maybe, just maybe, they would remember that lesson when their own moment came, when they had the chance to help someone who needed it, to offer a hand to someone drowning. Maybe they would think of their great-grandparents and choose kindness, choose generosity, choose love. And the legacy would continue, debt paid forward into eternity, love multiplying with each generation. That was the real happily ever after. Not a perfect life without problems, but a good life built on love and mutual support. Not a fairy tale ending where everything was magically resolved, but a real ending where two people who cared about each other faced the world together and made it better for having been in it. The story of Olivia Thompson and Harrison Owens was complete. The innkeeper's daughter had been drowning in debt. The cowboy had cleared it and said she owed only him. She had paid that debt with her love, her life, her devotion. And he had paid it back the same way, until the scales were balanced and there was nothing left but gratitude and love and the legacy of a life well lived together. In the end, that was all anyone could ask for. To love and be loved in return. To face hardship and overcome it. To build something that mattered and leave the world a little better than you found it. Olivia and Harrison had done all of that and more. Their story was finished, complete, ended in the best possible way. Together until the end and together beyond it. Forever and always, debt paid and love eternal.